We are Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14, presented by Steaks, here to preview Missouri's trip to the other Columbia, Missouri, where the Tigers will take on the South Carolina Gamecocks. Kickoff 4 Eastern on the SEC Network. Both teams coming off wins. Missouri just barely escaped losing to Vanderbilt at home. South Carolina now has pulled back-to-back upsets of Texas A&M and Kentucky, and I suspect Williams-Brice Stadium will be full and Sandstorm will be blaring on Saturday, Blake.
Yeah, I'm curious just in terms of the matchup itself, how intriguing it is. But I think South Carolina's a top 25 team now, and I think it's a big game no matter what. Whenever you're a top 25 team that is, like we've said, has certainly played a lot better, and maybe I don't want to say undervalued a bit, but I think it was just like we mentioned before. Just what do we make of the Kentucky win? Well, now not only they have that win, they've got the win against A&M, and yeah, playing some pretty good football right now. So I think South Carolina comes in feeling good about themselves. Missouri, I think they come in feeling good about their defense. Beyond that, I'm not really sure, but yeah. So I think this is it's an interesting game just based on the matchup here. But like we mentioned, I think South Carolina clearly the team with a lot more positive momentum at the moment.
Yeah, Missouri's offense, not a unit I've got a lot of confidence right now. Missouri scoring 24 points a game, Carolina giving up 24.9. Let's see, Missouri has thrown 9 picks. Carolina has picked off 9. Missouri's given up 16 sacks. Carolina's got 10. I think half those were in the Kentucky game. When Missouri runs the ball, it is averaging 4.7 yards per running play. That takes out sacks. Carolina giving up 4.8 by the same token per pass play. Missouri 6.2 yards per throw. Carolina only giving up 5.9. Got a chance to watch Brady Cook last week. Was not that impressed in his game against Vanderbilt. Of course, South Carolina's got a stud in Cam Smith. I don't think there's going to be a lot of points scored when Missouri has the ball, Blake.
Yeah, I don't think so either because I mean we've talked about South Carolina's defense, right? And when you look at kind of what they've done to this point, I think that was something that kind of stood out with me during just the winning streak they've had here. Really beyond that Georgia game, where think about where we were a month ago with them. We're just like, man, I don't know, but I mean that was more of Georgia being Georgia at that point. But since then, South Carolina's given up 24 or less points in these 4 games they've won here in a row. Now, one of those comes against Charlotte, who just fired their coach. One comes against South Carolina State, a Kentucky team without Levis. But I still think the defense clearly has put itself in a position to feel very confident about where it's at. And I think you can look at the opponent and say this and that, but when you actually watch them, they're doing a lot of good things. And so I think going up against an offense here, right? When we talk about some of those other teams they played, I don't think Missouri's offense is going to be one that's just going to jump out on the page at you, and you feel like you've just got to prepare a whole lot differently than you did against some of these other teams they played recently. Because I don't really know what Missouri's offense is, and I think that's the biggest problem here.
Yeah.
Is I don't know what Missouri's offense is at this point. I think their offense is how good their defense is. And, beyond that, yeah, we've talked about Luther Burden and they got him involved. And that's, once again, I think going to be the key. But if you're just talking about quarterback play and those kind of things, I think Cook's thrown 3 interceptions the past 2 games. I think 7 interceptions this season. So I don't, not really anything in terms of, I think when you look at kind of the setup here, I don't feel like there's a lot that South Carolina is probably going to be too intimidated by just with this Missouri offense.
Okay, before we talk about the matchup on the other side of the ball, there's some big games coming up this week in the SEC. To add some extra excitement, we do what we always do. We make predictions in the Stakes app. That is STAKES. We want to hear from you guys if you agree or disagree with our takes. So go to playwithstakes.com/14. Sign up for Stakes, place your prediction, whether you are for or against our predictions, and you can find our handle at Southeastern 14. If you use the invite code Southeastern 14, When you sign up, you'll get a double welcome bonus. Okay. When Carolina's got the ball, this is interesting too because Missouri's defense, I think, has been, as we've said all year, very underrated. Carolina averaging 33.1 a game, Missouri giving up 23.1. South Carolina's thrown 10 picks. Missouri's picked off 6. Yards per rush play, South Carolina, adjusted for sacks, averaging 4.8. Missouri giving up 4.4 per pass play. Carolina averaging 6.8 per pass. Missouri only giving up 5.6. Again, I think Missouri's defense has been very underrated. Carolina's run the ball well recently, but didn't put up a lot of offense in that game with A&M. That was more of a special teams and field position game as I watched it. What's your take on this side of the ball?
Yeah, I think you kind of expected that against A&M, though, in terms of not really, because again, we mentioned that A&M's offense is what it is, but their defense can be really good at times, and so I can't say I'm shocked by that. But I mean, I think it comes down to we always say it's getting your playmakers the ball, right? And Marshawn Lloyd is South Carolina's top playmaker in terms of the guy I think that can drive them to where they want to go here in terms of having a strong finish this season. And I think you look at his numbers and what he's been able to do. He's had some good games, and I think we know again what he's capable of, and I think he's going to continue to be the strength of this South Carolina offense. And of course, we're going to have the conversation we do all the time about Spencer Rattler in terms of what can he give you in terms of consistency. Um, I think that's going to be the same conversation here. And look, he's going up against a really good defense, like we said. You're the one that brought it up a couple weeks ago. Missouri's offense, or excuse me, Missouri's defense, one of the more underrated aspects of the league this year thus far, because they've been right there with a chance in a lot of these games they played in, but they just have not had that offensive punch to maybe get them over the hump. So I think that's what it comes down to is, Rattler's probably going to try to challenge them down the field. We know he can throw the long ball, and that's some of the things that they're going to try to do. But I mean, I still think that this is a get the ball to Lloyd kind of as much as you can here, and let him kind of take advantage of his playmaking ability. And so, but either way, I think this is why this over under is set at what, Chris? I think it's like 47 and a
47 and a
half.
half.
I
Which,
mean,
by the
it's
way, if you take what the teams have done, it should be 52 and a half. And I'll get to that in a minute. But I thought that was interesting.
Well, and I think it's just because you look at the two defenses, and I feel like this is a pretty good opportunity for both defenses to, kind of flex some of their strength here. Because realistically, like we said, South Carolina's defense has played a lot better. Missouri's defense has played really good all season long. Um, that's the strength of these two teams. And I think it's, again, it's just offensively for both sides. It's trying to figure out a way to get your guys, whether it's Lloyd, whether it's a Burton. I mean, Cody Schrader's had some good, rushing games for Missouri. It's getting these kind of guys in those positions to make those big plays because I think yardage, you're going to be grinding it out probably on both sides here for both teams.
Okay, before we get into picks, just a few things to wrap it up, and then I'll throw it to you to give us some stuff from Covers, which does a good job with some little things you might need to know. Penalty yards, Missouri 58 a game, Carolina 55. Special teams, FEI ranked Missouri number 91 in the country in special teams. That's not been updated through last weekend's games. Carolina was ranked number 1, and I'm presuming that's not going anywhere after Carolina returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown against A&M. Strength of schedule about the same. Jeff Sagarin had Missouri at 42 and had Carolina at 48. The line on this one, Carolina favored 4.5, over under or 47.5, making for a predicted final of 26-22 in Carolina's favor. Blake.
Well, here's the thing, and I think we talked about that over under. Like we always say, we're not professional bettors, but I find this one interesting because the defenses have really, like we said, I mean, if you think about it, Missouri's first game of the season, what was it, 52-24 against Louisiana Tech. Since then, the under is hit in every game they played. So the last 6 games, the under's hit in Missouri. And that makes sense because their offense has not been great, but their defense has been great at times. And so I think that's something to consider here for South Carolina. You kind of look at them, the over 5-1 in South Carolina's last 6 games following an against the spread win. So they obviously had that against A&M as the underdog. So that's kind of an interesting one. really not a lot of those trends that sort of jump out at you with this game. But I think for me, it really does come down to, if you're looking at the spread too in this one, Chris, when you have a game like this where I think both defenses could kind of be, what we're talking about perhaps coming out of this game, it does feel like, it's one that a game that'll stay close just by virtue of the defenses. But I think we all know kind of, I think where I'm going here. I'm going to go South Carolina. I feel like I've picked against them for a while now, but they are playing much better. I like what Lloyd can do. What does his numbers look like after this game? I think that's going to be interesting to see. But I just think South Carolina at home, they're riding a lot of, a wave of confidence right now. Shane Beamer has once again got them in a really good spot. And I just think this is a Missouri team I just don't have a lot of trust in offensively and to go on the road and be able to make those kind of plays against the South Carolina defense.
Well, one thing that has worried me about Carolina is Spencer Rattler's turnover proclivities. Carolina is -6 in turnovers, but guess what? Missouri's -5.
Yeah.
And you know me, I'm the numbers guy. I like to look at the matchups. I just think sometimes our heads get filled with stuff that doesn't matter, and we ignore what's in front of us. But I also watch football, and I watch South Carolina, man, and sometimes it just doesn't always look pretty. But at the end of the day, they've come out with so many wins the last 2 years. This is the team that under Shane Beamer just seems to believe, and is believed for the better part of a year now. And I'm not sure I sense the same belief on Missouri's sideline. This one's going to be at home again. I think that fan base, that might be the best fan base in the conference. You look at how much Carolina fans show up year in and year out, whether that product is good or not, for the most part. I think atmosphere is going to matter in this one. So I like Carolina to win, Carolina to cover, and I very much like the under in this one.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like Missouri's coming off a win, but it feels like we've said that a lot about like aside from that Georgia game, it's like they beat Vanderbilt, but
Yeah.
there was nothing that really just jumped out about Missouri in that win other than the defense. And I think that's where if they're going to have a chance to win this game, they're going to have to do what you just said. They're going to have to force Spencer Rattler to make multiple mistakes, which he may because it is something that he's done this season. But
Yeah.
I just think it's a better setup here for the Gamecocks.
Okay, we pick every single SEC game during the football season. Best way to catch that is to hit that subscribe button. We have a Wednesday night live show where we'll update our picks and tell you how injuries and weather and whatever might be affecting the games. So anyway, best way to catch all that, hit that subscribe button. Thanks to Stakes. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon at Southeastern 14.